If you are an estate agent, letting agent, or someone who is interested in the property market, then this, the UK Property Market Stat Show, is for you. My name is Christopher Watkin, and each week I produce a show of what's happening in the property market. The show itself lasts approximately 1 hour. The first half an hour is where we look at the UK property market in terms of listings, price reductions, sales agreed, fall throughs, and exchanges and house prices. And then the second half, we look at a town or a city. And this week, we are going to Wimbledon in London, SW19. Each week, I'm joined by a special guest, and he is no stranger to the show, Iain McKenzie. And Iain McKenzie is the boss man of the Guild of Property Professionals, an affiliate organisation of approximately 800 estate agents around the UK. I don't say this lightly, but Iain is one of the foremost estate agents I know. He knows his stuff. He is absolutely amazing, quietly competent, and gets on with the job. And everyone in the industry loves him to bits. Thanks for joining me today, Iain.
Thank you for the kind words. And as always, Chris, it's an absolute pleasure. Love this show.
Thank you. Those of you that have not watched the show before, this is our third year of doing this, and we do one every single week. The first part is always the same, the UK property market, and the second half is, as I said, on a different town or city. This week we are going to Wimbledon, SW19. So if you're a Wimbledon estate agent and you want to know how well you compare to your competitors, then watch that part of the show. If you're not a Wimbledon agent, then you might not want to watch that part. But what I would say is this, as estate agents and letting agents, especially with estate agents, is that we're all guilty of not getting enough properties on the books and you're losing listings. Guilty is probably a strong word, but we all suffer. I think that's a better word. We all suffer from estate agents that overvalue, and we all suffer from agents that other competitors that have cheap fees. So I'm going to be using a piece of software which shows if you are a good agent and you've got the stats to back it up, where you can go up against your competitors and show that they do overvalue and what effect that has on their saleability and the price that they achieve. So if you suffer from those, do watch that part of the show. This week is week 33 of the year, and that is Monday, the 18th of August, all the way through and to include Sunday, the 24th. 33 weeks in, Iain. Can you believe it?
It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Last bank holiday until Christmas we've just had.
There you go. There you go. And we'll see the effect of that, of the bank holiday, in next week's show.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So without further ado, as I said, the first part of the show is looking at the UK property market. So let us go and have a look at those stats. Here we go. So what normally happens here, ladies and gentlemen, is I just spend 30 seconds, a minute, looking at each individual stat, and then it will go to Iain for his thoughts. Okay. So in terms of the number of properties for sale this week that have come onto the market, 33,425 properties have come onto the market. The white line is 2025, and you can see by the graph there that the other year's there. So it's and just to give you an idea, last year it was 34,000, slightly higher, not much, another 600. And then in previous years, 31,235 in at 23. And we're using, and again, in terms of the other years, we're using more normal years of 17, 18, and 19, if there is such a thing as normal, of 17,000, 22,000, and 20,000. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong week. I do apologize. It was 30,000, 32, and 30,800. And again, you can just show that there, as you can see. So very in line with most other months, other week 33s, apart from 2020, where we were having obviously the post-COVID bump. The average price of a property coming on the market, 398,000. What's your thoughts, Iain?
I think if you go back to the accumulative one and you see the figure of 1.2 million, I think it's fairly safe to say that we now have delivered the territory that we've changed the supply and demand curve officially. That there's more stock, available stock, for sale than there has been for some time. I think some of the slides later on will show that. And if you're a business owner or an estate agent or a valuer in the market at the moment, I would be asking myself a few questions, which is, am I still pitching in the same way? And Chris, I am going big early, by the way, because people just listen, they might listen a little bit longer. Um, but are you still valuing in the same way? Are you still pricing your properties in the same way? Are you still using the same language to your customers, which can be difficult to reverse out of? I saw Steph's presentation a couple of weeks ago where she says, well, you can now use the fact that there's lots of price reductions to change your narrative. Well, actually, rather than waiting until that stage, change your narrative at the beginning of the valuation. So use the right language to the consumer that talks about the changing market, talks about supply and demand. And I saw last week that you were in Bournemouth. Well, I used to run countrywide in Bournemouth, and we used to have a philosophy where we would go and see a customer and say, right, our job is to make your property stand out. How many other one-bedroom flats do you think you're up against now? And the seller would say 40, 50, and you say, no, there's actually 325 one-bedroom flats in Bournemouth. Our job is to make yours stand out. So I just think that it really is time to think about your delivery at time of valuation, at time of market appraisal, so that you're not backing yourself into a corner, and so that you can have a really detailed conversation about the other data that you always go on about, Chris, which is if you sell within 25 days, you're 94% likely to complete. And if you sell within 100, you're only 55% likely to complete. So start really thinking about your business. And also, the final thing is, I think we're now in the territory that if there are 325 one-bedroom flats on the market in your area, unless you're dealing with a super motivated seller, why bother taking it?
You're absolutely right. When I had dark hair and was younger, I can remember my area manager gave me the valuing triangle.
Yeah,
And he said to me, on each end, there's three words. One is motivation, one is price, and one is fee. And he said, Chris, you should only take a property on if you've got two of those. And
yeah,
I think we're very guilty as estate agents of taking any stock because it's our fear of rejection and fear of loss of losing it to the competitors because they see it almost as a well, they love them more than me. And you know what values are like, they're very fragile. And here's a graph here which shows the number of properties that are
there you
present
go.
for sale. And the yellow line is the 31st of July going into the 1st of August. So you can see that stock levels here are approximately 15% higher than they were pre-COVID. Now, for the doom mongers amongst you, let's just remember that back in 2008, that was at 1.2, 1.3 million. So we're
Yeah,
not at those sort of levels. But at
yeah,
the end of the day, there is more stock. Now, interestingly, I've just been doing some homework, Ian, and that there is some really anomalies in that. And what there seems to be, it's interesting we mentioned Bournemouth, but there seems to be a glut of properties on the market on the south coast.
yeah.
And I was looking at some seaside towns on the Sussex Kent area, and also around Havant as well. And some of those areas, the number of properties for sale are identical to what they were back in 2007.
That's
Okay,
interesting.
so we are normal nationally, we're about 50% lower than we were, or about 40% lower, but they're almost identical. And I don't know why there is an issue on the South Coast. I'm going to be doing some more homework on that.
I think that the other thing is there are more agents now. The footprint of agency has changed in that you've got hybrid, self-employed boutique agents rather than just traditional high streets and corporates. So there's four sectors in one. I talked about this at the Guild conference. There's now four sectors within one, whereas it used to just be corporates or independents. And so it may feel that you haven't got as much stock, and that's just because if there's a boutique agency with one or two or three available in your town, they are just eroding what you used to get from a market share perspective.
You are so right. When the biggest estate agent at the moment is EXP, yet there's about seven or eight hundred of them. So that's actually seven or eight hundred firms
Yeah,
individually.
correct.
We
Yeah.
just don't we just don't think that. But the rate they're going, when there's only 12, 13,000 estate agency firms, Yes, they might only have 1.4% of the market, but they're now actually well over 10% of the estate agency firms.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Interesting. So just bear that in mind. And we will, ladies and gentlemen, when we go to Wimbledon, we'll be looking at stock levels in Wimbledon and we'll be comparing and contrasting it.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, let's move on and let's look at price reductions. So let's just remind ourselves we had 763,000 properties uh, for sale going into the 1st of August. And last week we reduced 20,319. The average price of a property that's being reduced is 387. Let's just remind ourselves the average price coming on the market is 398. And this is a month in arrears, so this is the July figure, and we'll be obviously doing the August figure when we've got the stats for September. We are reducing on average 14.1% of the homes that we have for sale, which again, if when we are only selling one in six houses that we're actually got on our books, is that enough? Are we reducing enough? I know we sound like a stuck record.
Yeah, I always used to work on a percentage of 15% when I was looking to look at the macro figure. But um, the reality of advising your customer is that you've got to just do what's right for your customer. So if you've got 90% of your stock that needs value a price correction, then get 90%. If you've got 2%, then get 2%. The one thing that so there's a couple of things I would be really focusing on now if I were an agent. The first thing I'd be focusing on is at a time of valuation, I would book in a re-inspection within 3 or 4 weeks and I'd go back round to the home of the seller.
You are so right. That's what
Yeah.
Romans used to do. At the physical actual appointment of taking it on, they booked in an actual meeting. I've been talking to some younger valuers, and they've
Yeah.
just blown their mind that they didn't
Well,
think of.
it holds the valuer's feet to the flame, doesn't it? In terms of they don't go there and overpromise because they know in 4 weeks' time they've got to go back and face the music. So it culturally changes the behavior at time of giving the advice that the customer needs. The second thing that I would be obsessed about in this marketplace is I would be obsessed about not being obsessed about the price that I achieved. I would think more about the differential that the person sells for and then buys at if they are moving on, because there is no such thing as a bad offer in a market like this. Every offer is a good offer if you work it and make sure that the gap between what they're buying and selling at is the price that they're looking to achieve when they first set out. Takes all of the ego out of the process. Forget ego in this market. Just think about results.
You're so right. I mean, I would use the word emotion, but it is the same thing.
Yeah,
Interestingly, ladies and gentlemen, anyone that's watching, I've actually got two scripts which work really well. One is short, one is long. And if you text me the word price reduction to my following mobile number, I will text you the two scripts. The number is 07950 If you just text me the word price reduction, I'll send you the two scripts and I will never text you again. But the magic is this is one is called the five steps and one is called the no thanks. And the no thanks one is a particular favorite of mine because you're basically saying, yeah, we've had plenty of viewings. We've had lots of views on Rightmove. We've had a few viewings, but the market's telling us we're overpriced. So do you remind them why they moved? Okay. How much money have you got at the moment? Nothing. Well, when we first spoke, you said you wanted to move to so and so. That's the motivation. And you say, right, so let me tell you what motivated sellers in your positions tend to do. So again, it's third party credibility that everyone else is doing it. They bring their asking price in line with what's happening in the market. They price it strongly and they negotiate. And even if you do get offers that are too low, you can say no thanks. But at least you're saying no thanks because at the moment the market's saying no thanks. It's just a clever cycle. It's not weird. It's not
yeah,
Machiavellian. It's just using human sales psychology. You, you know,
lovely. I love that, Chris. And the other thing I would say is that data doesn't care about your feelings.
you're so right. I mean, again, we were going to leave this to later in the show, but again, let's just remind ourselves, ladies and gentlemen, we are only selling one in two houses that are
Yeah,
putting on the market.
yeah,
You know, one in two, just atrocious. I mean, again, let's just here we are. Let's just remind ourselves. Look, in July. Nearly just as many exchanges as there were withdrawals. Your withdrawals is yellow line, red line is exchanges.
if you just click on that one in two, and I'm going to just mention, so um, as a disciple of the independent estate agent, the high street independent estate agent, and also hybrid now. I didn't necessarily agree with the purple bricks methodology. I respected it, but I didn't agree with it. The one thing I did agree with is that they had 100% payment ratio in the early days when they first set up, because they got paid at time of instruction. So whilst people would say that their average fee was £1,000, well, it wasn't. It was 2,000 because they got paid on everything. And this slide here absolutely goes to prove the point that as an independent estate agent, you should be looking to monetize the parts of the transaction that you have to pay out on. And it isn't unfair and it isn't inappropriate. It's perfectly right in that if you've got to pay for AML and proof of residency, you should be charging the seller. They're the people that want to put their house on the market. You should charge for it.
I mean, let's be back some numbers. Okay, let me just back some numbers up on terms of your saleability. Okay, I've looked at the top 50 estate agents in the UK, and I worked out what percentage of the homes did you actually exchange on. And here we go. The corporates exchanged on 53.2% of the homes that they listed.
Yeah,
The franchises exchanged contracts on 58.3%. The self-employed models exchanged contracts on 65% of the houses they listed. And the regional independents, 72.4.
interesting.
I've done the top 100 and I published that a few weeks ago. That was I could only find the top 50 in my records, and I'm going to be doing the top 250 as well when I can get
Wow, that's
find some
really
time.
interesting.
And the bottom line is this, is that the big agents do not get the houses through. Now, there are obviously exceptions to the rule, and there's some great corporates out there and great individual offices. But the bottom line is is the ultimate measurement of whether an estate agent is good or not has to come down to, did you do the job you got potentially paid to do, which is sell the flipping well house?
Yeah,
You know, it scares me. In London, and we're going to be obviously coming to Wimbledon, in London, the two large corporate agents, we won't mention any names,
no,
they are shifting 1 in 4 or just over 1 in 4 of the homes they list, whilst the other large regional independent, who's not a corporate, shift 54%.
wow, that's really
Okay, so
interesting.
so you've got the three big bad boys of a state agency in London.
Yeah,
One's doing it at 24, one's doing it at 27, and one's doing it at 54.
wow.
That's not a gap. That's a flipping all that's massive.
You need the correlation back to the listing at time of valuation, time of instruction, to see where that pinch point is coming,
It just, I mean, again,
or stock profile.
I mean, ladies and gentlemen, there's websites and data out there that prove this independently. And if you watch the Wimbledon part of the show, you will see that software in action. And this is not an advert for that software.
Yeah,
This is basically showing you what's happening in the market. Anyway, let's get back off our
yeah,
stock boxes, Ian, so we can get back on them in a second.
yeah.
And we'll move through to gross sales. And this week, our gross sales let me just pull this up, are at 25,219 with an average price of 358. We are on 871,500 gross sales, which is 6.8% ahead of last year, 14% ahead of 17, 18, and 19. But do remember, we are approximately 15% ahead of stock levels. So just remember, our sales are higher, but our stock levels are higher. Actually, if you look, the same percentage of homes today are selling as they were pre-COVID levels, which is between 50 and 54%. It tends to flicker about between the two. And then year to date, the white line is 2025 on sales agreed. So very similar in terms of gross sales to last year. I'll just pull that up. So this year we're on 25,219. Last year, 24,873. So again, just before we go to Ian, you will notice that everything drops next week, and that's because of bank holidays. Okay, so the bank holiday does have an effect. What's your thoughts on the sales, Ian?
It's strong. I mean, the when you and thank you for allowing me to see these slides before this presentation. When you actually look across the theme of all of the business, whilst I started off with that the supply and demand curve has changed, and I still believe that fact. Actually, when you look at the other stats throughout the business, the stats show it's an average market. It's a good, strong average market, and I think Toby last week said stable, reliable, consistent, and it is. It is stable, reliable, and consistent. There is a but coming. The but is it's coming at a time when prices have gone up, national insurance has gone up, minimum wage has gone up, certain portals prices have gone up, and what hasn't changed is the time frame for completion, which I know that you don't cover because this is the front end activity. So it is just a watch out that anything you can do to get your deals across the line quicker and to get them into your bank quicker is definitely where we need to be in this marketplace. But I think summary, good, strong, active market where people can put their house on the market and know that within reason, subject to pricing, they are going to move, or at least 50% of them are.
Good stuff. And again, just a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, let's just remind ourselves of the important stat that Ian said earlier on. If a property sells within 25 days of the property coming onto the market, that sale has a 94% chance, which is an almost 19 out of 20 chance of it subsequently making it through to exchange. If that sale, however, takes 100 days or more to achieve, the chances of that sale then making its way to exchange goes down from 94% to 56%, which is just over 11 out of 20. That is a massive drop. And again, if the property is priced particularly well at the start, now again, you're going to turn around to the agents watching this saying, but I need to overvalue Ian to get the listing. But that's where it comes back to you is simple stuff like getting the valuer to book in an appointment at week 3 or 4 at the listing. Because
Yeah,
I'm of the opinion, and again, I know a lot of people disagree with me on this one, that the only person that should be doing the vendor management is the person that put the house on the market.
agreed. I completely agree with you. I think it's the right thing to do. And you don't have to overvalue. What you have to do is have the right relationship, a relationship built on trust with the seller to be able to talk openly about the other appraisals that they've had, whether the seller thinks that the other agent has bought the instruction, try to flatter them onto the market or deceive them onto the market, whichever inflammatory word you want to use. And if you have that open relationship right from the get-go, you can actually have a sensible conversation with people. But again, focusing on the differential rather than the ego around the price.
You're so right. And again, a great line from Tom Panos, is, pardon me, is don't judge me on the price I give you, judge me on the process to get you that price.
Yeah, perfect.
Uh,
Perfect.
and if remember, credibility is gained by the questions you ask, not by the statements you make. So therefore, all I would ask, ladies and gentlemen, is when was the last time you went on some development, not training, development with your boss or with any organization you're on, looking at your pitch, your free val pitch.
Yeah.
And what I would say is it's really hard to prove credibility on the sofa. So what are you doing on your marketing, on your Facebook posts and everything else, that when you do come round, people go, well, we best listen to what this guy's got to say. You know,
Chris, 30, I've been in this industry 38 years. You can tell by the hair.
just as started as a child.
Yeah, I wish. 17. We used to do mystery shopping all the time. I can remember Ray Casley, my regional manager, walking into the office and throwing a cassette recorder at me at the desk, saying, "There you go, Macca, another recording." And you would challenge, did you get, how did you deal with them and blah blah blah. I don't know whether agents are assessing their own teams now. Nurture Group have got Know Your Market, and they can do mystery shopping for you. I personally think it's a very, very valuable tool.
But are people prepared? It's like a Pandora's box. Are you prepared? Is the boss prepared to open up and listen?
Well, it depends whether you want to understand the effectiveness of your business because sales isn't about numbers. I know we're talking about numbers today, but sales is actually about ratios.
You're so right. Right, let's move on. we measure here the average asking price of properties coming onto the market, which is the red line, versus the average asking price of a property subsequently going through to sell of the sale agreed. Okay, you're going to say, well, we don't know what they actually sold for. Well, we do know because we've got evidence from Hamptons that says apart from COVID, then that's always between 1% and 2% below the asking price on a national basis. Okay, so you can see here that in the last few months, the average asking price of the properties coming onto the market has been coming down like it did there and like it did there. So what we are going to experience, ladies and gentlemen, those that watch the show regularly know what's going to happen, is that a lot of people in London hold off in the spring and the early summer, and they put their houses on the market in the first 2 weeks of September, and that will shoot up that average price. You can see it happen there, and that is literally 5,000 extra properties in London will move that needle that much from around
Wow.
400 grand up to nearly 500. London is a world, different world.
Yeah.
Okay, so amazing there. That's a snapshot of week 33, the turquoise being the house sale price and the green the average listing price. And the percentage percent is 11%, but that is about to go to about 25% in the next week or so.
Right.
So let's move on. Resi sales through rate. This is the number of properties that agents are selling of what they have on their books. And there's always a month in arrears. And 15.37% of agents' resi sales stock sold subject to contract in July 25. Okay. Let's move on and look at fall throughs. 24.28% of properties fell through. But again, that's the fall through rate. So we look at the number of gross sales, the number of withdrawals, and then we express the withdrawals as a percentage of sales agreed. So if there's 100 properties sold, 25 fell through, of not of the 100, but just of your pipeline. 25 as a percentage of 100 is 25%. Okay. That is the weekly stats going back to 22. That is the actual numbers of fall throughs. But I think this is a more important stat is what percentage of your sales pipeline falling through. And as I said, it's around just under 6% a month is falling through. I mean, there's nothing really untoward there, is there? Just normal fall
No,
through.
there isn't. It's very stable, reliable, and consistent, although it's a subject you don't want to talk about.
Well, it isn't, remember, on average, 24.3% of homes do fall through. And I'm an absolutely massive fan of reservation agreements. And if you have not looked into reservation agreements, then more for you, but they are fantastic. Valuers don't like them because they're not trained on how to sell it as a sales advantage. Just like valuers are really rubbish at getting FS appointments because they don't want to get anything in the way of getting their listing. You know what these prima donna egos valuers are like, bless them all. Let's move on to anything on that before we go to net sales.
No, no, that's good.
Okay, so net sales this week, 19,096. That the white line there is 2025. The yellow line is 24. You can see that all the graphs. And ladies and gentlemen, all of these graphs are available to download. If you go to YouTube, go to the description at the bottom, there's a link there. All I say is that you can use them at valuations, you can use them internally, but please don't put them on social media because my clients that pay me to write local property market reports, some of them use them, and it wouldn't look particularly good if you were using them and someone else in the town was as well. Cumulative net sales, this is the stuff you're going to get paid on, ladies and gentlemen, and we're on 665,700, which is 5.6% ahead of last year and 10.4% ahead of 17, 18, and 19, which are more normal years. Anything on this?
No, it's good numbers. I mean, that's the bit that is consistent.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, this doesn't include second-hand brand new sales,
Okay.
so we don't put that in. I reckon we will end up on about 1.19, 1.21 million completed sales
Yeah.
in 2025 at the moment.
Yeah.
Okay.
A stat I read last week was 1.18, so you're in a total agreement with that report, which
So,
is good. It's a good number, isn't it? Anything a million plus is absolutely fine.
yeah. I mean, last year we're about 1.12, somewhere around
Yeah.
there. we might be pleasantly a bit surprised. A couple of extra graphs, percent prices, changes as a percentage of listings, and gross sales as a percentage of listings. We've already looked at this. This is gross, this
Yeah.
is exchanges versus withdrawals, and we've
Yeah.
looked at that, which is the percentage of chance. Again, it's amazing that even in the COVID times, we were only shifting 70, you had a 70% chance of selling. If you'd have asked most people, you'd say 100, wouldn't you? Or nearest.
Yeah.
We've already looked at that. That's the number of properties for sale, the number of properties in agents' pipelines. That's his unit numbers. So
Yeah.
again, pipeline's nice and full. So hopefully we should start being paid on some of those. Pound per square foot. This is the way I measure house prices. I'm particularly looking at the orange line. The orange line will, with an accuracy rate of 98%, foretells what the land registry will say in 5 months' time in terms of its movement. So we can see here that that the run up for the autumn and winter is in a positive direction for the land registry because it was in the first half of
Okay.
2025. Okay. Um, I think that is all the graphs. Anything else before we go to Wimbledon?
No, I think if people have watched this, they've know my view. Change your market, change your behaviour, and hold your listers' valuers' feet to the fire by going back and doing a reinspection.
Indeed, keeping it's the simple things, but that's the stuff that's going to make the difference. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the first part of the show. Now, let's go to Wimbledon. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we are using a piece of kit called Insight. Insight is a platform from the firm 20EA. 20EA have a number of different platforms, business generation and other stuff, but this is the one that we're particularly looking at, and this is called Insight. The best way to describe Insight, it's Rightmove Plus on steroids. It looks at stuff in a lot more detail and goes back 5 years plus the year we're in. We, myself and Ian, are going to analyze the different agents and see who seems to be performing best on various different metrics. Okay. Is there anything for you to be worried about? No, there's not. If we see stuff that we don't like, we'll highlight it, but we won't deride. And if we like stuff, we'll highlight it and say this is good. If you have any issues with the data, please contact 20EA. This bit of kit is available for estate agents. Now, might come across as that we're trying to sell this. I'm not. I'm their biggest fan. And just for the record, they do give me this piece of software free of charge. It's enabled me to do the stats show that you've already seen in the first part of the show. And it enables me to do what this is here. So this is available on a free version. I think the data only goes back 3 months if you want a freemium version. And then there is a package which has up to around 10 postcode districts, which is at one price. And again, the price of probably a decent takeaway for a family. And then there's a regional one, and then there is a national one as well. And the data that if you get this, you will see exactly what I'm going to see here. But as I must stress to you, if it's of interest to you, then please do contact them. Don't mention my name. I'm not on commission. Flipping well should be though, mate, shouldn't I?
I would say so, yes.
No, but no, can't do that. You know that's the way I roll. Right, okay. So without further ado, let's rock and roll. Ladies and gentlemen, for the purpose of this, we're just looking at the SW19 postcode, okay? And we're going to start off mainly with residential sales. And what we're going to look at here is the first thing is we're going to look at market share for new instructions. So we're looking at the 1st of January 2020 to the 26th of August 2025 in residential new instructions, and we are not using new homes, which is looking at the second hand. Again, just the postcode district, SW19. Just for the record, you can actually split this down and go individual postcode, the sectors as well. So just bear that in mind. So without further ado, let us go and have a look. So let's remind ourselves that 943 is the average. We start off with Edison's, and Edison's you can see here at 675, which obviously shows that in terms of their standing in the marketplace, they're lower to middle market in terms of the market because their average price is at 675. We can see here that their market share, unfortunately, seems to have been drifting down from somewhere in the early teens to around the 6 or 7% mark. You see you don't get this with Rightmove Plus. It just gives you a snapshot. Whilst here's this. So I don't know what's been happening there with regard to the marketing, but it looks like the market share has been drifting downwards. It looks like you have good and bad months, but the general trend is downwards. Let's go to Kinley's. Now, Kinley's again looks like you have good and bad months, but the general trend is upwards, and it appears that since 2025 that the market share is doing really, really well. Again, I don't have access to fees and whether people are doing cheap fees or anything, but that does look quite impressive, Ian, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yes, good trajectory, isn't it?
Go look at Dexter's. What are those spikes? They seem to be pretty regular. They look like Christmas spikes. So
Yeah.
again, what you tend to find is those agents that have Boxing Day promotions or something like that, they have the Christmas, what we call the Christmas spike. Most agents who work for the Connell Sequence Group have those Christmas spikes. So you can see here that they're doing something in the December time for their listings. And as I said, just a general trend, ignoring the spikes, I would say that's pretty level at around 8%. Okay, let's go look at Halls and Co. That's yellow. And again, pretty static around the 7% mark, but the price 938. Let's go and look at SW19. Again, I would say there that there's been a decent 21, a drop off in 22, and then probably a slight growth since 24. So again, nice one, SW19. Foxtons, nice and steady around the 4 or 5% mark. Price again, 623. There
Yeah.
seems to be some agents. Looks like there's a twin market here because the average was 900. So
Mm.
there's some agents here that's right. Let's go look at Savills. Okay. Brinkley's. So a general drift downwards in 2021 and 22, but it seems that you're pulling your socks up in 24 and 25. Again, we can forgive that August. Looks like you've had a bad August, perhaps someone on holiday or something, but the general trend going upwards. Oh, and the average price 572. Robert Holmes. Let's just go into Robert Holmes. Wow, 2 million. So the average is 293. So we will look at the upper quartile in a second,
Mm.
ladies and gentlemen. But that again, pretty out. Okay, Edison White. Okay, we had a bit of a spike there. Is that COVID spike? But it is. So again, general trend. Okay, Barnard Marcus, part of Connell sequence. But we've got the crystal spikes. How have we got the crystal spikes? Yes, we have got the crystal spikes. Okay, but it looks like it's all a bit spiky there. So it looks like you have
Mm.
a good month, a bad month. Andrew Scott Robertson. Again, a general trend downwards, although it looks like 25, you pulled your socks up. John D. Woods, nice and steady. Andrew Scott Robinson, again, general trend down. John D. Wood, trend downwards. Knight Frank, we will look at the upper quartile in a second.
Mm.
We'll just let the screen do the talking. I'll go down to number 30. Okay, let's just look at the upper quartile, ladies and gentlemen. So I'll go 1 million plus. See what that comes up with. And now all of a sudden we've got a completely different marketplace. And it looks like Robert Holmes and Savills slug it out. Well, it's nice and tight at the top, though. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, let's take that back down to 0. Okay. Let's look at the last year, see if there's any newbies that are coming through. Anyone new there? No, EXP's coming up. Early days for you guys. Okay, we're okay there. Any questions on that before we go and look at stock levels?
No, not at all. It all seems very straightforward, isn't it?
Okay,
There's a very well. The only thing I would say is there's a very clear demarcation, isn't there, between upper quartile agencies and mass market?
very much so.
Yeah.
If we had the time, almost worth doing two separate ones.
Yeah, there's a saying that I've always used in agency, which is buyers don't discriminate, but sellers do. sellers really want to associate their property with a brand that they feel matches its quality.
Very much so. Very much so. Okay, let's have a look here. So this is the number of properties that were on the market in Wimbledon on the 31st of July. And we can see here that it was hovering around the 1,000 mark, and then she dropped down, and now she's back up. So now for there are 20% more homes for sale in Wimbledon today compared to pre-COVID.
Wow.
And again, if we just look at the upper quartile, we can let's do that. So this is the upper quartile. Is there much difference in the upper quartile? Not massive. Well, actually, yes. Look, compared to the, nearly 40% more now.
Mm. Mm.
Okay. Uh, so that's interesting. And right, let's move on. Okay, there's a lot of data here, ladies and gentlemen, and there's a lot of fluff, and there is an awful lot of gold in here. Gold that will help your estate agency. So what have we got here? We are looking here at between the 27th of August 2024 and the 26th of August 2025. We've put them in the order of the new instruction levels, and again your market share, which we've seen in a previous slide. I'm going to ignore the sold subject contracts because ultimately, as I said earlier in the show, the most important thing is what percentage of homes did you list, did you end up exchanging on? Okay. And if you add it, so basically what 20EA do is that 161 plus 94, because again, a property only leaves an estate agent's book if she exchanges or withdraws. We all know that. So in the last year, Kinley's, so if you add up 161 to 94, that will add up to 256. So 256 properties have left Kinley's books in the last 12 months from the SW19 postcode, of which they've exchanged contracts on 63.1. The average in the town is 46. There is some really ups and down numbers here. I mean, look, there's one here at 63. There's Edison White at 68. That is absolutely amazing. Edison White at 68. And again, we've got SW19 at 59. Edison's at 63. That is an amazing figure, Edison's. Well done. Dexter's at 47. Foxton's at 37. Robert Holmes at 27. I mean, just think how powerful this is that if you say, if you're Edison White and you're going up against another agent with a lower number, you can say, Mrs. Miggins, with me, you have nearly a 7 out of 10 chance of selling. With the other agent that you're considering, it is just over 1 in 4. And here's the proof. That is mic drop moment stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. In terms of reassuring the customer that you're the agency to have the right trust in.
And that's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, is if you are looking for a unique way to get your message out there that you are different, there is nothing better than an independent party said this. And let's just look. Okay, let's just look at the withdrawal rate. Okay, so an average of 46.6% of homes that leave agents' books in Wimbledon exchange, which is better than the London average at 36. So I'll
Yeah.
give you that, okay? But 53% still withdraw, but there's some massive numbers here. One thing that concerns me there is Brinkley's at 64, Robert Holmes at 72. So if Robert Holmes puts a house on the market, 7 out of 10 of them will leave their books unpaid. So if I was the boss of Robert Holmes, I'd be saying, what am I doing? What am I doing to ensure that I get these houses sold and not withdrawn? Because it's a liability, isn't it, Ian?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it costs money, doesn't it? That's the thing. And unless you're monetizing the process and getting something from it, you're basically taking money out of your own bank account.
Let's look at the fall through rate. So fall throughs, the average is 23.7, and you can see there's a multitude of sins in there. Dexter's at 1. I'm not sure why that's 1. You either have no fall throughs or just the way that the records get managed. But if you do notice, you do have quite a high withdrawal rate. So the way the computer picks that up. Okay. So a lot of interesting stuff there, but ultimately it's that column there.
Mm.
Yep. Okay. Right. Let's move on. Okay. A lot of information happening here. This is the overvaluing screen. Now, those of you who have not seen this screen before, I'm going to have to go into a lot of detail. So I do apologize in advance, but you'll see why I have to in a second. So what 20A have done is looked at the last 2 years of the properties that you've exchanged contracts on. Okay. Last 2 years. And what they do is this: when the house came on the market, they date stamped it and saw what you put the house on the market for versus what they thought the house was worth using their AVM model. A bit like it's not Valpal, but it's like it's their own Valpal. And you can see, and the difference between the two is the percentage in this column here, the overvaluing stat. So Kinley's overvalued by 0.88, Dexter's at 2.63, Foxton's at 3.21. And remember, these are only the properties that ended up exchanging. So stuff that didn't exchange are not included in these figures. So that's that column there, the overvaluing stat. Then this stat here is what price did you achieve from the original asking price? So I would expect that those that overvalue will have a bigger number on this side
Hmm.
because house sells what it's worth. So therefore, Kinley's there. Whilst they overvalued at 0.88, they achieved minus 1.88% off the original asking price. And you can go down there. I mean, the one that sticks out like a sore thumb is Foxton's that they overvalued at 3.21%, but achieved, you can see the figure on the screen
Wow.
now. Now, the problem with percentage, if you actually wanted to work it out, you'd take this number, the red one, away from the orange one to give you a flavour of what stuff actually sells for. But people don't like percentages. So what 20A says is this. If everyone put on £1 million house, what would you achieve? And then the average Wimbledon agent would achieve £981,000 on an average £1 million house. So you can see here that Kinley's can say we would sell it for 989, which means that Kinley's could say we will achieve £8,510 more than the average Wimbledon estate agent. And here's the proof. And if you go down that line without mentioning any numbers, you can see that if your fee is, I mean, there's some amazing numbers in that. You can see it for yourself. I'm not going to say them out loud, but there are some amazing numbers in there, both good and bad, that you
Hmm.
can say, yes, my fee is £5,000 more than the other agent, but you can see here that I will achieve £10,000 more. And surely the cheapest agent, Mrs. Miggins, is not the one that charges the cheapest fee, it's the one that leaves you the most after the fee.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Cheapest agent is the agent that gets you the highest price.
Amazing stuff. I mean, there's some amazing numbers in there, both good and bad. We'll
Yeah.
just let the numbers speak for themselves. It's just mind blowing. Okay. Right. Which agents sell the houses the quickest? And we're looking at the top 10. And the average takes 82 days to find a buyer. Last year it took 71, so the market is slowing slightly.
Hmm.
Get back to this year. Okay, so Kinley's take on average 46 days to find a buyer and 152 and a total of 152 days from new instruction, that's NI, to completion. Savills take much longer. Again, Foxtons were at the upper end of the overvaluing, so they take longer to sell. But again, let's just remind ourselves, not a particularly brilliant exchange ratio at 35. So if you watch the shows, ladies and gentlemen, there's a direct link. Those that overvalue don't sell as many houses and don't exchange on enough, and quite often don't get the best price for their vendors, all because of your ego. And if you are a lot of people here, they're corporate estate agents. When was the last time you went on sales psychology training and development to actually come up with some great one-liners to understand how people move? Or are you just using the same sales technique you have since you were at Countrywide? Because don't get me wrong, Countrywide was brilliant training, but things have moved on. Oh, I tell you what, talking of Countrywide, I interviewed John Hards.
Oh,
He spoke very highly of you, and that's coming out in the next few weeks.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Lovely man. Lovely man. Is he still living in Foy?
Yeah, well, I interviewed him at his house. We're in the rain. That's the amount. And it wasn't on the Watkins sofa, it was on the Watkins sandcastle. Right, there you go. But you can see there the sort of length of time that houses take to sell. And again, let's move on to lettings. And immediately the thing that's screaming at me is the growth of open rent.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, 5 years ago, 1 in 10 houses went with open rent. Now it's two out of 10. And the scary thing is this: 51.2% of the homes that have come on the market with open rent in the last 2 years were previously on the market with a high street agent like you. And that is, forget purple bricks as we're all running around like headless chickens. This is the silent killer of lettings agencies. Right, let's just go and see who's the moving and shaking in terms of of listings. Because again, listing properties coming on the market will have an indicator of who is the movers and players with the number of properties to rent. Foxtons, nice growth, dropping down. Kinleys, nice and steady. Brinkleys, dropping. Winchester White, SW19, Ellison's. Watch, let the members do the talking. There's growth there. Oh, growth with Halls and Co. Nice one. Edison White. Oh, John D. Wood. I'll go down to number 30. There you go. Okay. Lots and lots of interest.
Anybody that's watching that bit of video, go back and look at the average price achieved by agent. So I wasn't looking at the graph trends, I was looking at the price achieved. There's a huge variance. £5,000 a month down to 1900.
The other thing as well, Ian, is I've done some work on this, but the pound per square foot.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and you'd be amazed how low open rent is compared, for the same house.
That's interesting. I have to say that, I mean, Open Rent is doing a remarkable job from a building market share perspective. But as a landlord, particularly with the legislation changes that are coming, I wouldn't want to be managing myself. I have to say, I'd want to be instructing a very good agent that was charging me a very good fee to look after my biggest asset.
You're so right. And again, just follow that, ladies and gentlemen. You'll be amazed. We'll probably want to put on just flats or just houses to make it a bit more appropriate, but it does work. You can say, look, I'll get you X% more, and here's the proof.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
We were charging when I had my agency, Chris, in Winchester, we were charging 15%. Everybody else was 8 to 10%. But we refused to put it on. If the landlord didn't see the value of the additional service they were going to get, we wouldn't waste our time.
and that it is your responsibility as agents and valuers to prove that worth. And if you can't prove it, then you need some development and training
Yeah.
to help you. When was the last time someone came out on evaluation? When was the last time you were mystery shopped? When was the last time you went on some training and development?
Yeah.
And if you're not, then if you say you're professional, but professionals have continued professional development, CPD. Anyway, let's begin off the soapbox. Any final thoughts?
I think that look at how you're bringing property onto the market. Look at the words that you're using. Hold people's feet to the flame. The supply and demand curve has changed. Monetize the process. The market's okay. Just do anything that you can to bring cash into your business quicker and to complete the transaction quicker, and work on. Final point is work on differentials, not on price.
So right. Ladies and gentlemen, you can see why we invite Ian back every few months. He's absolute gold. Thank you for your time today, Ian. Thank you everyone for watching it, and we'll see you next week for week 34 of the UK Property Market Stat Show.